Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel, That Model Railway Guy, where today I'm taking a look at a new model from Hornby. As you can see, it's a big one, it's the brand new 9F, and these are so new that they've literally only just arrived, so we're going to take a first look at it today. Now, the last loco I reviewed from Hornby all the way back in January was the W1 Hush Hush, and while generally I liked that model, I think it did have a few issues. At the time, there was quite a lot of people dragging Hornby through the mud with that release, so as this is another big loco from them, it's going to be interesting to see how they've reacted to that, if at all. Well, the first thing I can say is that the packaging has definitely improved. Now, I'm not going to do a full unboxing for you, but just to show you, this is the box that was delivered to me, and then inside this was bubble wrap that was protecting a second box. And this is that second box that was being protected by the bubble wrap, and it's pretty sturdy. And then inside this is the loco box itself, which had little foam ends to hold it in place as well. This is all a massive improvement over the Hush Hush, which I think was in the same size box, but was basically just rattling around in there, which led to a lot of the fine detail falling off. The actual loco box as well has a brand new design too. It's much thicker and has more of a feeling of quality to it as well. And to open it up, instead of sliding the loco out of one end, you actually lift off the whole top of the box. Inside is where the clamshell sits with the loco inside. Obviously that isn't in here at the moment, and of course there's foam surrounding the whole thing now as well. So even though Hornby kept quiet while everyone was raging about the W1, it does seem like they were listening and have taken on the feedback to make significant improvements, at least in this area. And that's really great, and let's hope the actual model continues this ethos as well. So getting back to the actual model now, here are some of the quick specs. The loco I'm reviewing today is in the BR black livery with the late crest, and we actually have a 21-pin decoder socket in this loco. Hornby have generally stuck with 8-pin decoders for quite a while now, but I know they did say earlier this year I think that they would be transitioning to use 21-pin decoders more often, and for me this is the first model I've got with one of those newer sockets. We have to address the price though, and of course this is going to be high. The RRP is £252.99, with £227 generally being the price that the retailers are selling this for. Now obviously we've seen price rises everywhere this year, and this wasn't exactly a cheap hobby to begin with, so I'm not going to tell you whether this is worth it or not, but I figure what we'll do is we'll take a look at the model and then you can decide for yourselves individually. So as we take a close-up look at the Hornby 9F, the first thing I have to mention is the weight. Now, obviously this is a large loco, but a lot of that weight does seem to come from the fact that the majority of the body is die-cast metal, and that gets a really big thumbs up from me. Personally, I've found in the past that a lot of my favourite Hornby models do have a metal body, for example the Peckett, the J15, the J36, and it not only gives the loco extra weight, but for me it makes it feel like more of a premium product. You can see as well that between the boiler and the chassis, Hornby have captured that distinctive gap the 9Fs had as well, with the firebox having to be raised up so high. You can see right through the loco here, although I don't think there's any detail between the wheels as far as I can see, but to be honest, I did get quite a close look at a real 9F recently, and I didn't notice anything between the frames then either. Now the livery is obviously quite simple, with it being British Railways black, although it does have a nice finish to it, partly I think because of that metal boiler. On the tender though, we do have the late BR crest. It's printed really nicely, and I have to say it looks great with all the rivets around it too. Below this, the axle box covers are painted yellow, and there's also some really tiny detailing on there as well, which is fantastic. I believe that says BR Timken, who presumably produced the bearings on the prototype, but I can't actually tell for definite, so hopefully you can see it on the close-up much better. On the cab, again the decoration is very simple, with the loco numbers simply painted on the side. One really nice little feature of this particular model though is the printed hazard warnings around the loco. Just like the axle boxes, these are absolutely tiny, and the printing is really nice and sharp and does add just a little bit of colour to the otherwise plain black livery. Of course, something else that is bound to catch the eye is the intricate pipework just in front of the cab. This has been done in a nice matte grey finish, and it doesn't look plasticky at all to me. Additionally, despite this being incredibly fine separately fitted detail, it's not actually flimsy or delicate at all, although I wouldn't recommend you go poking it. It does feel like it will easily stand up to normal handling. Round the other side of the loco too, we also have additional pipework below the cab. Again, this has a nice finish in a muted bronze and brass colour. I think a while back Hornby did like to use metallic paints for stuff like this, which never really looked right to me, but this in comparison looks fantastic. And in a similar colour, there is also a larger pipe on the boiler right up at the front of the loco too. Like I said, with such a plain livery like this, the details really do stand out, and Hornby have absolutely nailed them in my opinion. Taking a quick look at the wheels, and as per the prototype, they're not huge, but you certainly get a lot of them. Some of you may also notice as well that the central driving wheel is flangeless, but before any of you start having flashbacks to the trailing wheels on the Hush Hush, I believe that this is a feature on the prototype 9Fs as well, so Hornby have actually replicated this correctly. It will of course help too with running on the tight train set curves that a lot of our layouts tend to incorporate as well. I do want to take a quick moment to look at the linkage, as there's a lot to see here, and I can only imagine how long it takes to assemble all this and get it running smoothly, so that is pretty impressive. The front of the loco has some nice detail too, with the number plate up above the smokebox dart, and of course the shed code printed underneath this too. Moving down to the buffers, these are indeed sprung and of course made of metal too. I think I say this in nearly all my reviews these days, but while having sprung metal buffers isn't really much of a deal breaker, it is of course nice to have, especially on a loco of this standard and at this price too. The buffer beam itself is picked out in red, again with some nice riveting along the length of it. There is of course space for extra detail to be added here, so this seems like a good time to take a look at the detail pack. In here we have the couplings for the front, both cosmetic, and of course a second NEM tension lock coupling. You might also be able to make out that there's a vacuum pipe, cylinder cocks I think, brake rigging for the tender, and of course the two figures. Again, this is a new thing that Hornby have started doing, and it's another really welcome addition. I believe they used to supply very basic unpainted figures with some of their smaller locos a while back, but it's really nice to have a crew supplied ready to fit into this loco. While the figures aren't up to the fidelity often seen with 3D printed figures, they are still really nice molds, and the paint job is great too. You can see the driver here even has a little red tie on. And another admittedly small thing, but one that I think is a great improvement, is the fact that the detail pack is resealable. Now, I know this is kind of a silly thing to get excited about, but I think this is great for those of us who can't fit all of the detail but would still like to fit some of it. Back to the loco though, of course we've got the nice smoke deflectors framing the face of the loco, and there's some really nice handrails along these and down the length of the body too. There's also this linkage here leading from the cab. I'm not going to pretend I know what it's for, but it's another really fine separately fitted part, and like the intricate pipework before, this all feels really quite solid and not like it's going to fall apart at the slightest touch. Actually, speaking of that pipework from earlier, you can see it does extend up over the top of the loco too, where we also have a whistle. That is just plastic, but I think for such a small part that is understandable. The safety valves though are a little bit bigger, and as a result these are made of metal, so that's really nice to see. The top of the cab has some nice moving vents as well. Again, like the sprung buffers, this is a bit of a gimmick, although it does allow you to pose them in specific positions. And of course, the parts are much finer this way rather than it being molded detail. The cab windows have nice glazing in them too, with the rim of the front-facing windows being picked out in that bronze colour again. And inside the cab, we do have a lot of detail in here that has been picked out too. The way the 9F cab is laid out, it's not easy to get a great shot in here, but you can just about see that things like the handbrake and some of the controls have been picked out, and the dials have been included on the gauges too. Another really nice feature of this loco is that we get a firebox LED included too, and you'll get to see that in action just a little bit later on. In the tender, there's a nice coal load. It does seem to be removable as well, so perfect for those of you who prefer to add real coal yourselves. And then round the back there's a ladder plus more handrails and printed detail too. The tender is also where the 21-pin decoder is fitted, and having fitted one to mine since filming this, I can say it was really easy to do. For those of you who like sound in your locos as well, there's also space included for a speaker to fit into as well. So yeah, Hornby have made this really easy to upgrade if you like to run your locos on DCC. So speaking of running, let's give this loco a test on the rolling road. As you can see, the slow running is actually really good. I've maybe seen better in the past, but let's be honest, you're not likely to be doing a really slow crawl with large locos like this. I believe there is electrical pickup from all of the driving wheels except for the middle set, and all the tender wheels too, so keeping contact with the track really shouldn't be a problem. It's a really nice and stable runner though, even running now at a faster pace. Even with all those wheels and the complicated linkage, I have to say I feel very confident in this loco, and it does feel solid. In reverse, you can see it's much the same story. I will say that there was a little bit of a tight spot right out of the box, but it was only noticeable at slow speeds, and actually it's gone away completely now that the loco has been run in. Also at slow speeds, it does make a little bit of noise, but then once the loco gets going, it's actually pretty quiet, and it's really just the sound of the wheels turning, as you can hear now. So it certainly seems that the high standard of this loco extends to the running capabilities too, but it's all very well testing it on the rolling road. Now let's find out how it copes on an actual layout. So, welcome back to the modular layout. It's been a while since this appeared on the channel, but here we have the 9F backing down onto a train. You can see it's really nice and controllable, and actually let's go for a really slow coupling here. And there we go, the 9F is all hooked up. You can see as well I've added the driver figure who is just leaning out of the window here, and also behind him is the fireman as well. And now is also a great chance to take a look at the firebox glow as well. Since this is now running on DCC, it's already lit up, and I'd say it's pretty much the perfect colour and intensity. So let's get the 9F moving, shall we? As we have a nice smooth pull away from the station, you can see I've got it hauling a freight train today with a very random selection of whatever wagons I could find lying around. Obviously though, it's having no trouble pulling this length of train, especially with that quite heavy brake van on the back as well. Naturally, with that metal body, the 9F is quite a heavy loco, so I really don't think this is a challenge for it at all, and I have no doubts that it could pull much more than this if I needed it to. You have to admit though that it does look fantastic running around the layout. Even though this modular layout was really intended for small industrial tank engines, you can see the 9F is really quite happy running around here. It's also coping absolutely fine with some of my more dodgy track work too. I know there are some sections on the layout that a lot of larger locos often derail on, but the 9F is showing absolutely no problems at all. So generally it's a really nice smooth runner, and that sense of quality continues into the running capabilities too, and it's a loco that you can really feel confident in when it's on your layout. So I'm really impressed with this brand new 9F from Hornby. I think it's been a bit easy to knock them lately, but here they've hit back with what is a fantastic model. With rising competition from a multitude of other manufacturers as well, Hornby have reacted by raising their own standards, and I think they've taken on the recent feedback and criticism to make a lot of improvements. And that's really where this model shines. There's nothing absolutely groundbreaking here, but in all areas it tries to be just a little bit better to meet the expectations that the market has now set. Figures, firebox glow, metal bodies, fine but sturdy details, upgraded DCC. Hopefully Hornby will continue to include all these as standard going forward with more of their upcoming models. So, is this the definitive 9F? Well, that's really up to you. It's really not long since Hornby did their previous 9F, and of course there is still the Bachmann Model 2, which I believe is very good, but I think this new one from Hornby might just edge it out. It does come at a price though, which of course won't be for everyone. If you already have a 9F and you're quite happy with it, well, this is an improvement, but it's perhaps not enough to warrant an upgrade. If, like me though, you've never owned a 9F and you really do want one, well, I'd say you're probably better getting this latest version and just paying the little bit extra. Hornby are certainly making an attempt to up their game, and I think they should be applauded for that. Yes, the prices are high, and while partly we're just going to have to adjust to that, it does mean that a lot of us are going to become much more selective in which models we buy. It's up to Hornby and all the manufacturers really to convince us to buy their models, and of course the best way they can do that is by adding the extra value that we can see on the 9F. So I'm very happy with mine. It's an incredible model of an incredible prototype, and I think I'm going to have a lot of fun running it around my layout in the future. That's going to be it for today though, so thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!